Hello everyone. So I wanted to do a video covering the situation with Iran now because it is escalating to a pretty bad level, I would say. And also the new abortion laws at the state level that are, really in effect banning abortion in certain places. And this is, it's a very dangerous precedent. I think it's unconstitutional. I mean, based on the fact that the Supreme Court, ruled with Roe v. Wade that it is legal within certain bounds. Abortion is, yes. So, in order to basically outlaw that, effectively, it's like it's very in the details with the words. Like they get around it. Then they put a 6-week ban in a lot of cases. Like this was the Alabama one. 6 weeks is a little bit over a month, so that could be a missed period for girls. I mean, this is a common thing. So it goes against common sense to put this kind of strict policy into effect. Now, it's not in effect right away, but the fact that we're even having this conversation is pretty crazy to me. But the point I was making was that the Supreme Court, when they rule, that's the law of the land. That is the same thing as constitutional. So, it's crazy territory that we're going in, crazy right-wing authoritarian territory. But I still feel the need to address Ilhan Omar being smeared because it's happening over and over again. And this time it's also Rashida Tlaib. But with Ilhan Omar, there was a segment on Fox News where there was these renewed cries really to get her off the Foreign Affairs Committee because this came up before, and what they said was that they're implying that she's giving national security info to our enemies, and that's for no reason at all. I'm telling you, than the fact that she's a Muslim. She's a person of color, and they're profiling her. And that is completely unfair. There's no proof for it. I mean, the end of the day, if you disagree with her ideas, that's a different story. But you're trying to, characterize her, in this way, and that's not right because there's no proof for that. You're just pulling that out of nowhere. And so, I mean, like I say, she doesn't even have to say anything. People just put these things out there now. And now what happened with Rashida Tlaib is she had these comments. I don't have the quote here, but I did paraphrase it. You can go look at the quote itself. I think when you read it in context, it makes perfect sense. But she is being smeared because she was commenting on how it gives her a calming feeling to think of after the Holocaust, Palestinians made the way for Jews to have a safe haven, even though it was done in a way that stripped the Palestinians of their dignity, because at the end of the day, there was people living there in that area. They weren't all Jews. Some of them were Arabs, and they were kicked out. They formed another country there, and they just kicked people out of their homes. So, but the point that she's trying to make is that even though that negative aspect is true, we created a safe haven for Jews, and that's a good thing. In the wake of the Holocaust, of course, it's a good thing. And she makes that point clear, and she makes the point that the Holocaust is a tragedy, right, in the quote. But what happened is they took the very beginning of her quote and made it look like she has a calm feeling about the Holocaust, but there's no context there. So this is a textbook smear. This is so easy to go through once you understand all the details and you look at what is actually being said. So people are running with a certain narrative, and I bet people may not see the original context, and that's part of the problem and why they come away with that view. And of course, I think there is another aspect that is just bigotry, because these are the two first Muslim congresswomen in the House, and probably in Congress in general. So, this is... It's also creating an environment where they're getting death threats at an alarming rate, and it's because of the lies that are being perpetuated by people in right-wing media, including people like the president. And also Liz Cheney was the one kind of pushing this thing with Rashida Tlaib, and she retweeted this Washington Examiner hit piece. So that is just awful, and I think we need to come out and condemn that because it's fostering an environment of bigotry, and people are getting death threats as a result of this. So I think we need to all be careful here. With the Iran situation, there's kind of it's very wishy-washy to me because people are just kind of going back on what they're saying, including Trump. But basically, he pondered sending 120,000 troops, and to be fair, I don't know if it probably wasn't originally Trump's idea. It probably came from somewhere else. But the fact that they're floating that is pretty messed up to me. But then they came out, and officials in the Pentagon have said Trump does not want to go to war. And so the full context is the Saudi shipment was attacked, and there's no one's been officially blamed for it. But I mean, it's basically like Iran's in the hot seat, and they're like under this pressure. And this was true before the shipment was attacked, of course. But there's like very little details coming out about what actually happened, and this, is very reminiscent of incidents where it's kind of fabricated and it's used to justify a larger scale war. I mean, this is the Gulf of Tonkin with Vietnam. That if you look into the details, that was, basically, I don't want to say a hoax because there was an incident, but it was basically taken out of context completely and used to justify us going to Vietnam, large scale, and there was no need for that. Vietnam was a needless war, if ever there was one. So I'm going to go to USA Today, though, to go fully in detail. So President Donald Trump on Tuesday dismissed a report that his administration is planning to send 120,000 troops to the Middle East to deal with Iran, but then threatened to send far more troops if needed. Would I do that? Absolutely, Trump told reporters. Absolutely. Okay? No one does world wars, anymore, and that's the problem, okay? Alright, so Trump told reporters gathered Tuesday when asked about a New York Times report that his administration was considering a military buildup, but we have not planned for that. So, like, it's just like you're going back and forth like practically in the same breath here. It's like, I don't know what to think of this. I think that kind of confusion factor is used a lot of times to kind of hypnotize the public, to use the the words of Ilhan Omar, and everything they say is anti-Semitic and all. But so hours later, a top official in the U.S.-led effort to defeat ISIS disputed assessments that the threat posed by Iran had increased. British Major General Christopher Geica, I don't know, the number 2 officer in Operation Inherent Resolve, told Pentagon reporters the threat was, in fact, not higher. His comments were at odds with U.S. officials who justified the deployment of B-52 bombers and warships on the alleged higher threat. Navy Captain Bill Urban, a spokesman for U.S. Central Command, said in a statement that Geica was wrong. Urban said the remarks run counter to the identified credible threats available to intelligence from U.S. and allies regarding Iranian-backed forces in the region. The statement was remarkable for refuting a top commander in the region who has the latest intelligence at his disposal. The dispute came amid heightened tensions between U.S. and Iran. The Trump administration has warned ships that Iran or its proxies could be targeting maritime traffic in the region, and the Pentagon is deploying an aircraft carrier and B-52 bombers to the Persian Gulf to counter alleged threats from Tehran. Seconds after disputing the New York Times report on troops planning, Trump increased his threats on Tehran, suggesting if the administration does send service members to the region, we send a hell of a lot more troops than that. So again, like Trump is always like both extremes. It's wild the way that he does that, and it's almost on like every issue. He's like, I'm going to send a lot of troops, but I also don't want to send no. I don't want to send no troops. I want to send some troops, but not no troops, but a lot of troops. Like this is the kind of level that we deal with here. Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan presented a military plan to White House officials that calls for sending as many as 120,000 troops to the Middle East should Iran attack American forces or speed up nuclear weapon development, the New York Times reported on Monday. Trump's remarks, made as the president was leaving for a trip to Louisiana to discuss U.S. energy policy, came a day after he threatened Iran with a bad problem following news that Saudi Arabian oil tankers were sabotaged near the Persian Gulf. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo declined to comment on the New York Times story. We fundamentally do not see a war with Iran, Pompeo said, when asked about the report during a joint news conference in Sochi with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. He said the U.S. wants Iran to stop funding terrorist groups and to behave like a normal country. Now, I'm going to stop there, but this is, just crazy stuff to me. Like the fact that we're escalating. This is everywhere. This is not just Iran. It's the same with Venezuela, too. But with Iran, I find it scary because, like, they're a real... It's a formidable thing that's kind of, like, been eluded for a long time, like this war with Iran ever since the revolution. So, it is scary to me to think of us going against a stronger Middle East country like that. And, really needlessly, again, because, like, they didn't attack us in any way. Like, we're escalating with them, and, they're just kind of responding to our escalations at this point. This has been going on. This is an ongoing thing. So, it's just hard to describe that at the end of the day, people like John Bolton and Mike Pompeo, they have no place, controlling the levers of power in this government, and they have no position, like, speaking for the American people and what they want. And I know we don't live in a democracy, really. A lot of people kind of think that we do. But, we've always held this value that what the American people think is important, at least in theory, because now, we don't actually live that. That's why we see Congress has a terrible approval rating, and both parties are pretty unpopular now. So the system is very broken. And I think people need to get past this idea that, like, we're only going to demonize Trump. We need to demonize the people in his administration, and we also have to understand that they aren't new people. This is not a new thing at all. John Bolton was, part of the Bush administration. Mike Pompeo, I think, if I remember correctly, he was in the CIA under Obama. And, obviously, I guess Mike Pompeo didn't like Obama, but, like, at the end of the day, like, I just think these people and these kind of institutions, the way that they exist, that it shouldn't really be this way. Like with intelligence, it's like I kind of feel the need that maybe we do need that. Maybe we shouldn't, abolish it completely, but the way it runs now, we're a war industrial complex, the military industrial complex. This is, a huge part of our economy, and it's a huge part of what is funding government and what perpetuates that system. So I think that is a problem. We need to call that out. And the last thing on this was Tom Cotton. He was on TV. I forgot what network it was, but he feels confident that we can win a war with Iran. He just like gave this like very zippy response, and he almost was like Ben Shapiro, except like he's a little bit more. He can kind of put on a little more charm than Ben Shapiro at least, which is not saying much, I guess, but still, like, and he was like, "Yep, yep, two strikes, the first and the last. That's what it is." Like, dude, these kind of things have been said before. Like with Iraq, we've declared victory. It's never like we can just like pound these places with artillery like crazy and firebomb it and kill hundreds of thousands of civilians, and then it looks like victory, and then we plant a flag, whatever, but we never leave, is the point. We're still in Afghanistan, we're still in Iraq. So this is endless war, and this is how they make money off of it. It's just a constant industry in and of itself. So he's exuding this confidence because he probably thinks he could run for president in the future. And Tom Cotton, he's just an awful person. Like he's just wrong all around, and you just have to look at his record for that. So I want to go to the abortion laws now. So Alabama has essentially banned abortion, really, in just most circumstances. So this is from CNN. The bill, which was signed into law by Governor Kay Ivey, who I just want to touch on this real quick. So the Alabama governor is a woman, and I see a lot of memes and this line of arguing like if you don't like basically like if you're a woman, like you're the one who should be deciding what to do with your body, and like men shouldn't have a say. Which I get in theory why that is appealing. I understand that, and in theory I do agree. But the problem is there's women too that are going to do terrible things on this issue, as has been proven now. Because there's another person too. I don't have the name here. But there was another a woman too. I believe a senator of some sort. It could have been like a state level. I'm not sure. But the point being here is, let's not focus on identity. Let's focus on policy. Let's talk about the fact that the policy is wrong, and let's not focus on like who's doing it. So it says, signed into law by Governor Kay Ivey on Wednesday, only allows exceptions to avoid a serious health risk to the unborn child's mother for ectopic pregnancy, and if the unborn child has a lethal anomaly. So there's no exceptions for rape or incest, and doctors could face up to 99 years in prison for performing an abortion. And they continue, this is a quote, "The American Civil Liberties Union and Planned Parenthood have already announced plans to file lawsuits against the Alabama bill, arguing it's unconstitutional. These organizations, as they have in the past, will likely also ask federal district courts for a preliminary injunction or temporary restraining order to prevent the law from going into effect, while arguments over the constitutionality of the law work their way through the courts." So in Georgia, there's a 6-week limit as well, and there is also, though, an exemption for rape and incest, and it says that there's the limit for 20 weeks, and from what I understand, like viability is usually around 23 weeks, so it's like maybe a little bit more stringent, but and a police report has to be filed. So, I mean, the point I would make with this, and people get back and forth kind of like on a debate with whether like reporting that someone raped you is kind of good because then it will at least allow give a chance that he won't do it again to someone else. But I think people don't see the other side of that, and how for the victim, like, it's bringing up a lot of past trauma and having to go through that in great detail in court. It's a very hard thing to do, and sometimes we're talking about very young people, as I'm going to get into. it is kind of unfair the way it's set up, and we see that there are cases where rapists will either get away with it or get a pretty lax sentence, and I think that's wrong. The fact that that happens, what are the solutions to make it better? I don't know necessarily, but in the case of abortion, I mean, like we're talking about people wanting to do with their body whatever they want, and 6 weeks is just a little over a month here. So like you're you're just finding out at this point that you're pregnant, basically. Like it's bizarre that we have to have this conversation, and people they think they know like the physiology too, and it's like there's a real heart in there. No, like you have a pulse, but this is not a cardiovascular system. This is not something that is formed in that amount of time. So people need to kind of understand the science of it, and people like Meghan McCain, I know, was like, well, actually, the left is like anti-science in this area because life starts at conception. Like, dude, or woman, my father. I know. Look, she is talentless, and everyone kind of knows this. Like, she doesn't know what she's talking about. But look, at the end of the day, I think just it's unconstitutional what's going on. I would hope that the courts rule that, but we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we have to just wait and see. But so let's go to Ohio now with their situation, and this is the story. This is the headline. Once it freaking loads, wow. Sorry about this. A pregnant 11-year-old rape victim in Ohio would no longer be allowed to have an abortion under new state law. So, an 11-year-old girl in Ohio was allegedly raped by a 26-year-old multiple times, leaving her pregnant, according to police reports. A state law passed in April, but not yet in effect, says that victims like her won't have a choice to have an abortion. They would have to carry and deliver their rapist's child. The law prohibits women from obtaining an abortion after a fetal heartbeat is detected about 5 or 6 weeks into a pregnancy, before most women even know that they're pregnant. The law provides no exceptions for rape or incest. So wow, this is, again, 6 weeks. In Ohio, the law provides no exceptions for rape or incest. That is wild. In an email to CBS News, the Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost defended the statute. Sometimes the evolution of the law requires bold steps, Yost wrote. In the last 46 years, the practice of medicine has changed. Science has changed. Even the point of viability has changed. Only the law has lagged behind. Dude, I mean, citation needed, yeah. Like, what science are you talking about here? I mean, the point of viability has changed. Well, I'm pretty sure it's not 6 weeks, dude. I'm not buying that. So when signing the bill, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine focused on the rights of the fetus. The essential function of government is to protect the most vulnerable among us, those who don't have a voice, he said. Government's role should be to protect life from beginning to the end. Oh my goodness. Though the 11-year-old in this case won't be subject to the state's pending law, thousands of other women in the future would be. More than 4,000 women were raped in Ohio in 2017, according to data compiled by the FBI. Of those, more than 800 victims were assaulted by a family member. In the future, if women become pregnant as a result of such crimes, I can't say Ohio. No, I'm not doing it. Ohio's so-called fetal heartbeat bill would prohibit them from receiving an abortion any time after about 6 weeks, which is before most women even know they're pregnant. They said that again. Wow. That's funny. But, okay, you get the point. Like, this is... How can you have a moral argument and you're saying, yeah, this 11-year-old um, she shouldn't have an abortion. It could be from someone who's older. It could be from a family member. Um, there's this happens probably in so many different ways that we don't even want to imagine, of course, because it's horrible. But it's a reality, and we're going to make a system in which that child has to give birth to a child. Like, what kind of society do we live in then? Like, this is beyond absurd to actually have a system in which we enforce that, and that's what the law of the land is. That a minor, so someone who couldn't adopt a child if they wanted to, has to give birth to a child, and then what's going to happen then? Like, they give it up for adoption, I guess, but like, you're putting a child through labor like that, through childbirth, like. Like, why people would want to do that, and why they delude themselves and think that they know more than the scientists is something that I'll never understand. But this is unfortunately the case now in a lot of states. And I just read that Missouri, I believe, is considering these kind of laws, and I don't know how this spike just occurred out of nowhere, because these things just came one after the other. But hopefully we see in the courts that they rule in favor of precedent, in favor of Roe v. Wade. That would be the best thing that could probably come out of this, honestly, at this point.